Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for attending the Just Economy podcast, building Florida's Just Economy $1, one vote at a time, brought to you by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida, a membership organization ensuring that the Community Reinvestment Act is adhered to by the financial institutions throughout our state and helping to build our economy, building a just economy. So today, I'm bringing a good friend of mine, Elizabeth, known as Kitty.
Hi.
Elizabeth's going to come on to talk about her organization and she's just starting a brand new nonprofit organization. She's worked with several around our area before, but she's starting a brand new organization. And we brought her on because we think that this topic is key to the community. It's key to the nonprofit world. It's key to the corporate world as well, and how we deal with our LGBTQ plus sisters and brothers. So we look forward to having that conversation today. So, Kitty, first tell us a little bit about you, how you got here. I'm always interested in people's history.
So I cut my teeth with grassroots community organizing with Acorn in Detroit.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So Community Reinvestment Act was like our big campaign back then, way back then, right?
I remember Acorn.
Right.
And how they were done dirty. Definitely.
Absolutely. And it was a great organization as far as skill building for community organizing, and so I continue with that grassroots model.
I know that you've worked with several other organizations here in South Florida, and you've now started your own organization. So what were you doing prior to moving to starting this nonprofit?
I did work as a peer specialist for Henderson Behavioral Health. I worked in HIV at a Ryan White program at an FQHC in Miami, a federally qualified health center. Miami's still the heart of the HIV epidemic. South Florida, highest number of new infections still in the country. So we're still facing all of that. And then having some experiences with partners and their health care, especially a partner who is a woman, a person of color, going through some real major healthcare issues with her. That got me tuned into the link between community work and healthcare.
Definitely a link. Without our health, we can't do anything in the community. So I think we have a tendency to separate the two too much. And not understanding that, without health, our community, it does not thrive. And that's usually health is where it starts. So I know you started a brand new organization. For the record, Kitty had a opening of her organization up in Fort Lauderdale. I went to the other day, and it was so cool. The way she did it, she didn't have the traditional, everybody was buttoned up and tied. No, she actually had it in a bar, and it was great. And she talked about she had her website ready, and she talked about the launch of a new organization. So let's get right to it. Tell us about the new organization.
So Moving Forward Wellness offers a trauma-informed approach for businesses, for nonprofits, for individuals to take that trauma-informed approach to their wellness, to staff management, to customer service, and to strategic planning.
Okay. So in what ways can we, as a nonprofit, for instance, can we use your services?
So I can help at all different levels. The first, most basic level is that when we go into nonprofit work and community clinics, there's no customer service training. So, at its base, this is a customer service approach, which we don't typically take in nonprofit.
Really? So, because nonprofits deal with customers constantly,
right?
And that's our bread and butter is the service is the services we provide. Right. Even if we are a membership organization, and for me, for instance, our customers are the nonprofits who are part of our organization. Right. They're the members of our organization, and if you don't, I think that comes from, and you and I think I've talked about this before. That comes from the nonprofits don't look at themselves as a business. So they don't look at those as customers. They see them all as clients. Am I right?
Right. Absolutely. I think that a lot of times in nonprofit, we adopt business practices that don't fit for nonprofit because people are very well intentioned, right? But we also don't take the most important pieces of business, which is that the customer's always right, that customer service aspect, meeting people where they're at, working together for the win-win.
Because because when you say that, that makes me think. Okay, so are we since we're providing a service, we think that we're as an organization, we think we're always right, and the client slash I shouldn't say client or the customer is not has to, for lack of a better phrase, suck up what we give them. Are we guilty?
Well, I wouldn't tell a prospective client that.
I'm sure you would, but I'm just trying to get to the heart of the matter.
So to the heart of it is that we look at the result. We look at the end result. Okay. Whatever agency you've got going on, whatever community clinic got going on, are people returning and referring? Is your staff frustrated about how your clients show up? Right? What is that level of happiness in the workplace? What is that flow and camaraderie and collaboration in the workplace? Because that's super reflective of the customer service that we offer. So those things are very, very linked. And so that's where I think we come in nonprofit, that being well-intentioned is great. Right? And at the end of the day, intention is 49%. How it lands is 51%.
That's important how it lands, because I think you said something very, very important is we want those referrals. We want folks to come back because we want to try to help the community as a whole, correct?
Exactly.
So but if we don't get that referral, then nobody knows about us, because one of my biggest complaints about the nonprofit world is we don't market ourselves well.
Right.
We just don't do it well, and I get it. You know, we're busy trying to help. We're busy trying to encourage the community. We're busy trying to help the community. Busy trying to solve the community's problems. But we shouldn't be afraid to pat ourselves on the back as well. And can your organization be able to help us with that?
Absolutely. I can definitely help with marketing, as you say, and messaging, which is definitely important. But having also have a background in sales, what's the best kind of marketing and messaging you can have is word of mouth. So that's why we focus on return and refer, because if you're a small nonprofit, you either have to do that marketing work yourself or try to scramble to hire somebody, which I know people can help out in nonprofit with marketing as well. And really, we still want people returning and referring. You can put all the messaging out you want. But if people aren't coming back,
then the nonprofit eventually goes away, and the mission is done. Although I will say this, I was at an event one day, and the gentleman was speaking, and he said this. He said something I never will forget. This had to be maybe 6-7 years ago. I was at this event, and he said, "What's the mission?" He asked the room. He said, "What's the mission of a nonprofit?" And everybody the different nonprofits. They knew what the mission is, and he was like, "No. The mission of a nonprofit is not to have a mission.
That's right.
That's the mission of a nonprofit, is to put ourselves out of business." Yep. So, I just wanted to say that it just always stuck in my mind. For me, it was one of those profound moments that hit you, So, what other services do you provide, or the organizations?
So I offer wellness coaching and training for the staff.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's talk about that, because I'm on my own wellness journey.
Yes.
I'm big with mindfulness and wellness at this particular point in my life, and I think it's definitely helped with dealing with the stresses, the everyday stresses. So one of the things we definitely neglect, especially as nonprofits, and it hit me one day. You and I were talking, and it hit me one day that the nonprofits, I'm looking at them, they're taking care of the client, the customer. They're taking care of the customer. They're taking care of the community. They're working all this hard, and then they got to go straight home, and they're taking care of their families. Yep. When are they taking time for themselves? So how can we help with that mindfulness and wellness as far as the employees are concerned?
So we can do a couple of things. We can work at it from the individual level of helping people to be aware of their wellness, where they might be falling short, where they might be doing really well. It's sometimes as simple as making sure people know how to use their EAP and accessing their benefits and understanding how to use their benefits.
EAP?
Sorry, acronym alert.
Yeah.
It's employee, what is it now? employee, it's a wellness plan that now my brain is escaping me, but it's what allows you to access the mental health benefits.
Okay. And that's something I don't think any of us do well. Having a career in the military, that was always looked down upon. And I've noticed since I've been out, I still keep up with everything that's going on in the military. And they've really, really brought that up. They actually have wellness centers on post these days. Yep. When that would be looked down upon when I was in. Right. So but does that continue? Do you see that continually happening in the workforce?
I think those mental health benefits and those wellness benefits are out there. And because of our systems that we don't encourage employees to use them. And so that's where the strategic planning and the trauma-informed approach to management comes in, is to plan for people to use their PTO, and then there won't be a crisis when people have to take off, right? For example, plan for people to use their wellness benefits. Don't penalize them for it. Don't penalize them for using PTO. Part of what I can do from a strategic planning perspective is help with creating a system that allows for individualization.
You said something very, very important there, and putting that in the strategic planning. I've never seen it. I've sat on many boards. I've been a part of many strategic plannings, but I've never, ever, ever heard, not once, of wellness mentioned and mindfulness and mental health mentioned. Not once in strategic planning. So I mean, if you're out there and you're a nonprofit and you're not thinking about these type of things, and then wondering why our employees are so stressed, or even you as a CEO or the executive director, because you need it too. We have this thing that we think we got an S on our chest, and none of us do. But you said something. I mean, that's so profound what you just said about including that in strategic planning. And I would love to see that happen more. And every board I sit on, I'm bringing it up from this point forward. I'm telling you, thank you so much there, Katie. I really appreciate you saying that. So, you say that you help with strategic planning, and we talked about the mindfulness and wellness part of strategic planning. So what else do you bring to the table with helping with the strategic planning?
Basically taking a look at where people want to be in the organization, who they want to come along with them, right? So again, that wellness aspect really lends itself to continuity of care and the longevity of the staff in the agency, right? And it bakes it into the culture of the organization as well. So that's the main focus. There's also coaching and training as far as being able to recognize one's own biases and offering those and how we show up in service as well.
Okay, so you just touched on a subject that's kind of hot, especially in this state, as we have just enacted a new law starting the 1st of July about diversity, equity, and inclusion training in at the workplace. So how do we navigate around this? Because DEI is still important. It's not something, not talking about it does not make it go away.
Right.
So how do we I don't want to say get around the law, but how do we work within the law in order to get this? Does your organization help provide training in that as well?
We are still getting our feet under us as far as how we're going about that and making sure, because now we have to be concerned about liability.
Yeah. And I think everybody's worried about that. I was in a meeting last week and they were talked about, what are we going to do with this new law? How do we navigate around that? So I definitely understand that you're still trying to get your feet wet as to how that's going to work.
Well, I think a lot of it is focusing on results.
Okay.
Right. And it's terribly ironic that we're going to end up having to use a lot more words to describe the things that we have labels for now. Right. So if we're looking, we can focus on outcomes, we can focus on behaviors, we can focus on creating atmospheres where people want to engage. And I do believe that this is an opt-in law, that training, any kind of DEI training cannot be mandatory.
Yes.
Right. So I also find it very interesting that Florida's an at-will state. So if people continue to opt out of these trainings and the organization continues to build in a culturally competent way, well, then we now have a natural separation.
Yeah. This is going to be a difficult dance, I think.
It is.
But something that we're going to have to adhere to at least to at least until someone else is elected, or we get a new legislator in that's willing to change this law. And I guess what bothers me about it is it wasn't mandated. DEI was not mandated before. Corporations, there was no law saying you had to do DEI, but there was, organizations did it for the good of their organizations, right?
Yes.
So I'm glad that you guys are gonna take up the mantle and try to navigate us around how we do this, because I think it's going to be, if nothing else, that will keep you working. If nothing else, organizations trying to navigate that, especially in the nonprofit world. We talked about strategic planning. We talked about mindfulness and wellness. What else does your organization do when I call you in to help me get right?
We do ongoing coaching. Okay. Which is very different, right? So many places, it's so hard just to get even in a 2-hour training. But if I can be available to individuals and small groups for coaching and do more like a case study situation, it really does create that atmosphere of curiosity and being able to ask questions and understanding how, that's the place to ask the question so that we can frame that in front of the customer and make sure that they come back and make sure that we're not causing harm to people seeking services.
Okay. So when we're talking about individual coaching, we're talking about for staff, the CEO / executive director. What about the customer themselves?
I absolutely can do that customer training. And what I really find interesting is to do the training with the customer and the staff so that everybody has the same information.
Really?
Yeah.
That's different.
Especially when you've got like a case management situation, because it can really help build rapport. Well, did you hear what this was said? Did you hear what that was said? And then be able to talk about it. So it can be individual. I do customer and client facing work. And part of the reason that I focus so much on the staff is because the onus should not be on the customer for the improvement.
Okay. And that's a lot of what's done in the corporate world as well. The corporate world, they focus a lot of training on the staff. The original saying used to be the customer's always right. I don't think that even used anymore, because we have access to Twitter and every social media thing known to man. And if we don't like something, we can say something bad about that company right online, and then everybody goes, agrees with it. So when dealing with the person who's dealing with the customer, or dealing with the ED who's leading this organization and leading this staff, is it difficult to change the mindset?
That depends on the person who wants to change, right? I'm not there to change anybody's mind.
Gotcha.
I can't.
Okay.
I can't. And that just causes me stress and frustration to even think I can. And that's part of the trauma-informed approach. We're not there to change someone's mind. We're there to accept people for their own reality. And that there are coexisting realities.
So, you said something very, very important, is that you don't want to change anyone. And I think anytime someone brings in a coach, the first thing they think is they're going to change me. They're here to change me. And we as human beings are very, very resistant to change.
Yes.
Very resistant, especially if you've been doing something the same way your whole life. I can't tell you how many times I've moved from one organization, especially when I was in the Army. I moved from one organization to a new organization. I have a change of duty station. I'm taking over a new shop or taking over a new company, and this is the way you've always done it. Okay, really? That doesn't make it the do all end all. And you're saying that you're not there to change them. So if they're not there to change it, do you find a lot of resistance?
Oh, sure. Of course there's resistance, even
though you're not trying to change people.
I am looking for the low-hanging fruit, right? I'm looking for the people that want something to be different. And we often, the stress and the anxiety comes because we want something to be different, but we don't want to do anything different to get that, right? So, okay, that's valid. I'm not going to waste a lot of frustration on that, right? What I am going to do is look at what is the need and what is the easiest path to get there.
Okay, so you've mentioned several times trauma-informed, right? What does trauma-informed mean?
Trauma-informed care is an evidence-based practice recognized by SAMHSA, which is our federal mental health agency, and recognized by the CDC as basically a collaborative model. You're working with the client. Cultural competency is baked into trauma-informed care, and meeting people where they're at is a popular phrase these days, but that is also part of what trauma-informed care is.
Okay. Okay. Do you find that people are receptive when you deal with trauma-informed care? Are they? Let me put it to you this way: when you step into an organization, has it been harder or easier to bring in your services?
I think it's getting easier, and unfortunately, because the word trauma is so pervasive.
Okay.
Right?
People get trauma from the word trauma, in other words, right?
It can happen, sure. And so, again, that's what we're looking for. So people are welcoming when they realize, like you say, I'm not trying to change anyone. My goal is to make people's jobs easier.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because people who they have a particular view of the client, the customer, the patient. And I'm here to say, let's look at this with a different perspective, right? The trauma-informed perspective says, we know stuff has happened to people, and so they may be reacting in certain ways. So we kind of look past the behavior to meet the need, and then at the same time, we're now setting a standard for behavior that is like, now people can trust you. So now they don't have to become irate.
Okay. So are the practices and trauma-informed practices the same, whether it's small, whether it's a business or for-profit business or a small or a nonprofit, or are they the same?
So the cool thing about trauma-informed care is it is that system that can be individualized.
Okay.
If we follow the principles, then we can meet that person with individualized attention. And so it can be applied broadly. Okay,
so that brings me to another question, which is what I'm here for. So when you say it's individualized, so each person on the staff is could be trained differently. Well, I mean, let me put it another way: trained in a different way.
Absolutely, managers do it all the time.
Okay,
successful leaders do it all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's one of those corporatized models that we can build into nonprofit a little bit more. Is that leadership development, not being
Because the last thing the thing I don't want to leave out of this conversation is the leaders. The leaders have a tendency, just in my experience, and I probably have done it myself. Leaders have a tendency to think they're always right, that they know everything, and asking questions of staff, and getting information from staff, or taking staff ideas is a big no-no, because I'm supposed to be the leader. I'm supposed to know everything, and I'm the know-it-all. And how do we get leaders out of that path? Because I'm a firm believer that that needs to stop.
Stop promoting people with those attitudes, right? So that would be a board decision in a nonprofit to screen for that. Because again, we're not here to change people. We can offer information. What I would do if there's a leader that I was talking to and was having these problems, I would ask them, how do you feel about your work? Do you feel good about it? Do you feel like you're connecting with your staff? And what would you like to see different? What could you? And then we start with what could you do differently? And then it becomes a natural flow. That change, because we know also from business learning that buy-in is really important. You can't do anything without buy-in.
Yeah, and it takes it from not only staff but from the leader as well.
Absolutely.
And in the nonprofit world, the board of directors have to buy in as well, or your organization kind of falls by the wayside, and you're standing there in the middle of the room going, "Why is everything crumbling?" But that's the reason everything's crumbling, because we haven't involved everyone in decision making. I'm a big fan of asking subordinates and asking staff, what do you think? And feel free to say what you think and how we can do this better. Feel free to do that. And if you don't cultivate that that way you do that, project that leadership, then you're going to have a problem, and then you'll wonder again. You're standing in the middle of the room, wondering why everything's crumbling around you.
Well, and honestly, that's where the coaching comes in, because it goes beyond that conversation, right? And people do that, and then they don't know what to do with the information, and they say, "Thank you very much. We're going to keep doing it this way because we're not sure what the next step is." So that's where I come in, is to help to integrate those, to make it easy and a flow. to integrate new ideas, to remember that, part of change is making mistakes and being curious, what we can learn from that, and having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important part. I mean, Kitty is definitely talking about some great points. If you're a leader out there, and staff as well, but if you're a leader out there, I think you got to understand that there's a wide variety of ways of being a leader. You can be the one that steps up and you're dictating constantly, or you can be the leader that not only sends messages but receives messages as well, and then you don't take it as an offense because someone sent you a message or that someone came up with an idea that wasn't yours.
Right.
And I think we got to let the ego go. That's one thing I definitely learned as a leader in the military. If you don't let that ego go, you got a problem. You know what I mean? So, if you could change, if you had all the power in the world and you could change how we do things, or how we conduct ourselves especially in the nonprofit world, from leaders to staff, customers, and dealing with customers, dealing with our mission, what would you do?
Well, first I would change the systems that we have to deal with, because those are very much set up against the most marginalized, which is our client base, our customer and patient base in our nonprofits and community clinics. So again, we would put ourselves right out of business with most of that. Next, I would offer a person-centered approach. Trauma-informed care is also, we could call it a person-centered approach.
Okay. Elaborate a little bit more on person-centered.
It's seeing that person as an individual and seeing how and using the system to help them as an individual. So it's another way of looking at that individualized care within a system.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we're definitely here because I totally agree with you. Is treating each person as an individual. Again, my experience, I had to learn what buttons to push, when, and where. And they weren't the same for everyone, right? It's not one size fits all, I don't think, right?
No, not at all. And that's what scares people, and rightly so.
You say scares people. What do you mean?
When we are adverse to change, when we hold the belief that change is hard, then anybody bringing something new to the table is going to be threatening. And that's understandable. I can accept that, and I'm absolutely here to give people a safe space to land, a soft place to land around that.
So let me ask you something. When you're conducting your coaching or conducting your program period for an organization, is everything confidential, or anything that I say to you as part of the staff stays between you and I? Or do you kind of generally report back to the leadership what's going on with their staff?
So everything is confidential. I would never rat somebody out about what they think or feel. I would first encourage them to advocate for themselves within that system, and we can easily identify barriers to that in a lot of different ways. So that's what I would take back to leadership, is there's a barrier here. We see across the board. Again, it's results, right? It's not. So that's where we move from the individual to this back to the system. So it's the results. You have a result where your staff doesn't feel comfortable or confident in talking about what's really going on. So that's a system issue. It's not an individual issue necessarily. And
I think the leadership has to change that system,
right.
In order to make it better. So, do you find that organizations are receptive, or are they still in the I like things are working the way I like them to work, and so I'm not going to change anything right now?
There's both. There's everything across the board, and so when you've got organizations like that, if it's a large organization, we can also work with program managers and program directors. I'm really interested, beyond the individual level, I'm interested in working with anybody who wants to make a change and who has the power to do so.
Okay. I would hope leaders, after you see this podcast, that you would engage Coach Kitty and relinquish some of your so-called power that you think you have. Actually, I guess I shouldn't put it that way either. But I think you understand what I'm saying. That you sometimes you got to loosen the reins just a little bit. You got to take your foot off the brake. Sometimes sooner or later in order to move forward, I think, and that's all a part of moving forward and growing. Am I right?
Absolutely. And you did hit on something, is that it is a myth of control, because in the end, people are going to do what they're going to do. People don't quit jobs, they quit managers. If your system isn't going to change, that especially a nonprofit, we don't pay people enough to stick around, then we play on their feeling about servicing the client. But eventually they will leave, and they might go to the for-profit sector at that point. So there is a cost, right? There's a cost to the leader who, or I would say the manager, there's a cost to those leaders and managers who want to hold on to their old ways. There is a bottom line to that.
Yes. You know, I'm in total agreement with you. I think we have to be willing to take chances as leaders, and anything to help the organization. And we've seen, and you just mentioned it, we've seen survey after survey after survey of, we've having this great resignation, and the great resignation for the most part, it's not in the top 5. Pay is not in the top 5. It has to do with the environment of the organization. It has to do with how things are conducted in the organization. It has to do with leaders, managers. Those are the top 3 to 4 things that it has to do with. Pay is down the list. So when we see people leaving, if we see a large turnover, then as a leader, I should be saying to myself, okay, why is this? What is the reason for this turnover? What is the true reason? And I should engage Coach Kitty to say, well, Coach Kitty, come in and tell me, work with me and let me know what it is that I could, not wrong, but I could do better. I think I would love to put it that way, right? Better than saying it's wrong. What can I do better, right?
Absolutely. We don't, like we were saying at the beginning, nobody in community clinic settings or nonprofits gets customer service training. And I meet people where they're at. I don't blame people for what's happening right now. So we do take an objective look at what's happening. And once we know better, we can do better. You come in, you take a look at my organization, tell me what things we can do better. Talk to me, talk to my staff. And work through our issues, and there may be some issues on my staff that I don't even know about, right. But you're able to actually bring that out of them, right? And you seem to be easy to talk to. Thank you. I hope so.
I think that's an important part of your job.
Yeah, that's the goal, and understanding that confidentiality, and also there are 360 surveys for a reason. That's a very common thing to have happen in the business world, and it's less common. We, our top nonprofits will do that staff satisfaction survey, and that's a great way to get some anonymous feedback about what's really going on for people.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Coach Kitty. We greatly appreciate you coming in today and talking about this very, very sensitive subject. And before we go, though, please give us your contact information and website and how folks can reach out.
So they can reach out through CoachKitty615@gmail.com. There is a Facebook page, Moving Forward with Coach Kitty, and the website is www.movingforwardwellness.org. And if you email me, I'll give you my phone number because I'm old-fashioned that way.
Well, thank you, Coach Kitty. We greatly appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming in today and doing our podcast. We look forward to seeing you soon. In any way that we can help, we'd be glad to. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, my name is Cornell Cruz Jr. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. You have been watching the Just Economy podcast, building Florida's just economy, $1, one vote at a time. Please see us on our website, www.reinvestmentalliance.org. That's www.reinvestmentalliance.org. And if you'd like to come in and you have something that you want to talk about within the community, no matter where it is, and you want to be on our podcast, we're looking for guests at all times. Please feel free to reach out to me, Cornell, at reinvestmentalliance.org, or my assistant, Olivia Cantu. That's Olivia C. at reinvestmentalliance.org. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.